We might look to kick off our second breakout session for the day. Again, we've got three great panellists that are going to give us three very different stories this afternoon. My name's Craig and I'm from Disability Sports Australia. And the session today is engaging young people with a disability and looking at the cycle of inclusion and the importance of starting the journey for young people now on the runway to Brisbane 2032. So on the panel today, we've got Renee Cohen from the Gold Coast Titans, we've got Fiona Coppin from Bowls Australia, and Christy Rohrer from our own Disability Sports Australia. So I might start things with Renee, who's General Manager of Community and Game Development at Gold Coast Titans. She's worked in rugby league for more than 15 years with extensive experience and passion for the design and delivery of game development and community initiatives. Renee is responsible for the strategic direction of the Gold Coast Titans community engagement, which involves relationships with a vast array of stakeholders. So I'll hand over to you. Renee,
thanks so much. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, everybody. It's wonderful to be here on the beautiful Sunshine Coast. I suppose before I start, I don't know, has anyone here, I know there'll be a few people in the room, have heard of the Gold Coast Titans Leagueability Program? Couple? A few? Awesome. So what I thought to start is we might show a couple of quick videos that gives you an understanding about why rugby league is so important and why, for the Gold Coast Titans, we want to make sure that there's a place in the game for everybody. So Titans work within three key pillars in the community: social inclusion, Indigenous and Pacifica engagement, and the last one is game development. So getting as many people to play the game, because the more people that are out there and healthy and active and feel like that they're part of something, the more that they're going to enjoy life. We found that our biggest boom area is women and girls, one, but the second biggest boom area is working with people with disability. In 2018, a group of 8 players in Ballina were training every Wednesday night with a different range of disabilities. They came to see us and said, we really want to play for the Gold Coast Titans. And I was like, that's awesome. Let's work out a way that we can make that happen. At the stage, they were partnered with FSG, which hopefully a few of you would know, a disability service provider. And we thought, we're a bit time poor, we're low on resources, the club wasn't going so great on the field, but these 8 young people are truly inspiring. We need to work out a way that we can help them and make them feel connected to something. So from there, we launched the Gold Coast Titans Leagueability Program in May of 2018, and FSG were there to provide logistical support, coaching, employment pathways, sort of everything outside of, providing the brand that the Titans were going to provide. But FSG went to receivership 2 months later, and from there, the Gold Coast Titans Leagueability Program was solely on our very small staff, which are of 3, which also had the rest of the club things that they need to also be a part of. So our receptionist managed the team, one of our game development staff coached the team, and from 8 players, we now have 60 players and 6 different teams that play in our Leagueability Program. So I'll just quickly show you our why of why this is so important to the club. If we can, just the next one. So this is all about the work that we do in this space. Hopefully a few of you might have seen this video before. If it works.
We're friends, you and me?
Yeah.
Yes. But we work together?
Yes.
Yes. And I'm the chairman?
Yes.
And what is your job?
Chief Officer.
Chief Morale Officer. So what do you do as Chief Morale Officer? Tell me, what work do you do?
Okay.
Yeah, this will be good.
Most water along.
Okay, water to the boys, yeah? You help people? Yeah. And what else? You make people very happy.
Happy.
Yeah, when you walk into the office,
Yep.
everyone gets excited, don't they?
Yeah,
You know why? Because they're happy to see Ethan.
How are you, bro? See you, man.
What does Disability Day mean to me? Yeah, to me it's a day of celebration and celebrating, you know, all those talents in the community that various people have and might not always have the opportunity to show them. You know, we're enriched by bringing everyone to the table and valuing what they bring. What's my favourite thing about Leagueability? Oh, I think it's just the absolute joy that it brings everyone who's involved. And you know, it's the players, it's the families, it's the carers, it's the you know, it's the volunteer staff. It's hard to compare with anything else, quite frankly. It just ripples through the entire community. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got 2 disability rugby league sides and we've got 2 intellectual disability rugby league sides. That program runs throughout the year. Basically gives them a platform for participation. They'll play games throughout the year, and at some games they'll actually play at the main stadium as a lead up to our NRL fixtures, which is, you know, just phenomenal. What these guys do for our player group, I think, is hard to actually pay justice to. It's great for a complete athlete who might be 23 who's playing in the NRL to go and spend some time with these guys and to see what they go through just to get ready for training, let alone train, and then the joy in their face when they get the opportunity to participate and play against each other at Cbus Super Stadium. Yeah, it's super strong, and they've brought some pretty special values to our organisation, and it's had a large part of the building our club DNA.
2022 is going to be sensational because we'll play more games, we'll train more, but you know what's going to be really exciting is too, you know, hopefully we get some, you know, at least a couple of curtain raisers at Cbus. So we'll be on the same stage as the women's team and the men, NRL, so NRLW and Leagueability, all on the same stage. Like, how exciting is that going to be? Yeah, look forward to that? Yeah, fantastic, yeah. Thanks, mate. Thanks, mate. Yeah.
A few of you in this room actually have met Ethan before. He really wanted to be here today, but he's a little bit unwell, unfortunately. But the difference he's made to our organisation, you actually can't quantify, because he walks into the room and everybody just absolutely lights up. And we wouldn't have met him if it wasn't for Leagueability. He doesn't believe in the sideline, so he just goes out to score tries. He does a quick tap in no matter what position that he's in, but the joy on his face when he plays rugby league is like nothing I've ever seen before, and I suppose that's the reason why we do what we do. I think too, our youngest player, so we have a junior development squad. Our youngest player is 12 and our oldest player is 64. It does show that no matter your age, there's a place in the game in rugby league that you can play. And I think the other noticeable thing for 2022 is that with the introduction of the NRLW program, it means that we've got all these young females out there that are seeing on television what our amazing NRLW girls are doing, and we've had an increase of 7 girls playing full contact Leagueability, which when we first started, I think we only had 1 girl, and now we've got 12. So it shows that if they can see on the television, or if they can see role models of a version of game that they want to play, then we need to make sure that we give them the opportunity to be able to do that. Sorry, Maddie, the next slide. The other thing that I've definitely noticed from the program is that in 2018, we had 1 community sponsor. In 2022, we've got 9 community sponsors, and I'm telling you, the main reason why these community sponsors are coming on board is because of that program. So when you are looking at and working with sporting codes or trying to design something so we are creating that runway for Brisbane, is that it's more than what you're providing to the players and the participants and their parents and carers. It's also what you're providing to your staff, to your sponsors, to all the people within your community, because these players are truly inspiring, and if you are showing people the amazing work that they do, that video that I just played is our largest video in 2021. So it had over 3.2 million views, much more than, even though we almost made the finals into the next one against the Roosters, that was still our highest viewed video for that year. So it does show the cut through that these programs can bring, and it's not just about the elite. Our players and our staff wouldn't be who they are without this program. The other big thing for us is that we've obviously got the NRL and QRL here as well. We're working really hard to provide a framework where there's a version of the game that everybody can play, and there's an opportunity for, no matter where you live across Australia, that there's something that you can play in regards to rugby league. But for us to be able to do that, we've been working really closely with Griffith University to do two different studies. One study on the best practice in regards to the work in this high contact space for people with disabilities. The second one is the social return on investment, so that we can actually put a figure to people so they can understand that if you invest $1 in this program, or this program Australian-wide, not just for the Titans, for anyone that wants to play rugby league, this is the benefits to the community that that provides. I'll just quickly click to the next one, sorry. So COVID obviously for many people for everybody was so difficult, but as you would know, working in this space for people with disability, that lack of routine, that lack of connection to people, it was really a big struggle. So for us, we fought really hard to make sure that we could still run our program, although it was a little bit ad hoc during the year. But the big difference that we can see, and I'll show you just quickly in a second, is that consistent training once or twice a week compared to every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, their skill level development and their gameplay. The last time they played about 3 weeks ago at Seabus Stadium, I've never seen a better game. I've never seen them play a better game of rugby league. We had 3 games on that day, and we had the crowd cheering. It was really incredible to see. So I'll just quickly show you that one, and then I promise I'll stop talking about this.
You hold this map, I'll hold your hand. Take this love around the world. Don't mind those crows buzzing around your head. Nothing's gonna hurt you, girl. I believe your heart is stronger than you and I. I'll hold your hand. Take this love around the world.
Hopefully that's just a small way to see that we're, fingers crossed, making a difference in these young people's lives. But more importantly, I think we're definitely learning more from them than they're learning from us. Thanks.
Thank you, Renee. A lot to be proud of there for you personally and the club as well. Can I next introduce Fiona, who's the Diversity and Inclusion Manager at Bowls Australia. Fiona has extensive experience in the sporting sector, having held a variety of roles across national, state, regional and government sporting organisations, along with local sporting clubs. Her experience as a coach, consultant, administrator, business developer and government advisor means she has a comprehensive understanding of sport, and we'd love her to share some stories about what Bowls Australia is doing in the diversity and inclusion space.
Thank you for having me here today. I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. Bowls Australia is a very inclusive organisation. I remember when I first started back there 11 years ago, one of the first things that really impressed me about turning up for my first day at work was that another 2 of the 18 regional bowls managers that had been employed were 2 people that both were living with disabilities. They were also probably 2 of the best bowlers in Australia at the time as well. And I think that that's where it really set the tone for what I saw and admired most about bowls. And I'll end it also in saying that the Australian Open is on at the moment down at the Gold Coast. One of the most wonderful stories to come out of there was 2 days ago with the first round of the Australian Open, and we had a 7-year-old boy and a 13-year-old boy in the pairs playing against 2 men in wheelchairs. And that's their next game may be against a Commonwealth Games medalist. So the ability to go in and play without having to think about anything else other than bowling is such a wonderful thing, and it's really nice. I have quite a few friends that live with disabilities, and one of the things that I know for them is really important is to just think about being a person and being a person first, and I think that that's one of the wonderful things that bowls does. If we could click to the... We have a number of pathways. Bowls is, of course, traditionally thought of as an older person's game. But if we look at our high performance team, they're a bunch of young, good-looking, fit people that are doing very well, and they train very hard. They work along with the AIS, and they certainly work hard at what they're doing, and they're certainly high-performance athletes, and that's certainly what we aim towards and what we are doing. Everybody gets in and does all of their training together. There isn't, between our para-athletes and our athletes, there is no difference in their training. There is still the same amount. There is still the same respect. There is still the same thought. They're all together in camps together. What we're aiming for and what we would like to see for 2032 is, of course, the inclusion of bowls within that in the para space. We understand that probably looking at another space is probably a little bit more difficult, but bowls has been included previously in Olympics. As far as Commonwealth Games go, we're very excited about what our results will be and how we'll be. We've got some challenges ahead of us at the moment. It's taken a lot more fitness training and a lot more strength training this time to get our athletes ready. The greens are a lot slower, so they get a lot of rain there, so it's going to be different. So they've been training up at Mount Tamborine. So that's been a challenge also for our para-athletes. So they've had to find some extra strength and to really work on that area at the moment. From a point of view of getting people ready, so looking at the next 10 years and getting our athletes up and ready for that, we have a program called Rookie Rollers. So if I could just go to the next slide. Actually, can I go 2 slides along and then I'll come back? And again, this one. So our Rookie Rollers program is one that we have that we take out to schools, and it's getting a series of things that we've tried to make it as easy as possible for people to take. It's a package that we come on. You have a club one, which is 8 bowls, which teachers can take out and use, or we have our volunteers taking that. Or we've also got a 4-pack, which means that people can buy them themselves. So we sell, I think they were saying the other day, we've sold 640 of them recently. A lot of grandparents are buying them for their grandchildren, etc., to get them started and to have that similar interest. What we have been working on in the para space is that we've been working on Rookie Rollers All Ability. So we're looking at doing the same sort of thing, but having things like ramps, etc., and pieces in there in those packages so that clubs can buy those, and that also schools, etc., can buy them as well. We've got also places like the Active and Healthy organisations as well. So a lot of people have actually been buying those to use. They're on their way, so they're on a boat somewhere, like everything else, probably like my lounge that I ordered a while ago. The Rookie Rollers kits have been a really great step for us and a way to go in. One of the things that was that we spoke about was having a way that people could engage with it if they weren't bowls coaches, so we know that a lot of the time the teachers are taking people out, carers are taking people out, etc. So what we did develop, and we've almost, I think we had it ready for release, but then Apple said that there was a couple of words missing, so we had to go back and pay a lot more money again to put the words in that they needed. But what that is an app. So you can go on that app as a student, and you can press the app to see what you have to do or what you can do, and to get your bowling tips and to see videos. As a teacher, you have all of that information available to you as well, and then once again, as coaches, etc., you can go in. So we've put all of our information there so that people can carry that. So we understand that people need to get to bowling clubs to be able to do that. And just on that, I guess, to put it into perspective of where we sit in the sporting world, people often think of crackerjack and that's about it when it comes to lawn bowls, or a little bit of barefoot bowls to celebrate somebody's birthday or play after the wedding or whatever it is. But we have over 1,800 clubs around Australia. So Bowls has more clubs in Australia than what Woolworths and McDonald's has put together. So we've got a pretty good spread across the community. But I could go back again with those slides, that'd be great. So, and one more, yep, that's great. Back one, we haven't got our clicker. That one, that's the one. It's probably too difficult for everybody to see there. What we now have at Bowls Australia is we've got a para coach called Ellen Faulkner. We've got a real advantage there with Ellen. Ellen has come in from the UK. She is an exceptional coach. She's an exceptional player, and she was probably the person that should be here today. But she's playing bowls today and trying to win, and I'm sure she'll be very determined to do so. But what we've been working on really hard is to make sure that we've got all of those steps in place. Like every sport, we have our challenges. So we get good involvement with schools, and we've got involvement there, but our next step, it's then keeping people in the clubs and then having them go in. So when we've got family members that are involved with the clubs, and it's great because it is a sport that has all generations coming through, so we've got opportunities. There's lots of our athletes and our Commonwealth gold medalists who are there because they started with their grandparents. So that transgenerational option is one that we do really well. So the steps for us now are to come in is to do rookie roller at most likely school level, but we even go down as far as bowling with babies, so getting mums in with their children and getting them on the green and playing there and getting the babies even getting down to that level. Then continuing that through, so coming then through the school area as well. So the difficult part for us now is just working out that step to get from schools and then over then into the clubland and then keeping that option there. We do have a difficulty with girls in that space, women and girls, and that's something that is my job and that I'm working really hard on. We understand that that's an issue across many sports, but for us too, it's making sure that women and girls can actually play in the time slots that they're available. So that's one area that if anybody's got any ideas out there and would like to help us out with some new ideas, that would be great. We also have quite a disjointed area to come into the competition, so and identifying people. So one of the tasks that we're really trying to do in our next strategy is to bring everybody's conversations into the one area. So we've got blind bowlers associations, we've got deaf bowlers association, and we've got para bowlers association. So we've got all these different associations. The state organisations are working on them as well, and they have their own state multi-discipline areas. But we need to be better at getting it across to everybody, so getting the information out there. But we do have that in our strategy, and that's what we're really working hard at the moment, is to get everybody into that one place and to understand those very clear pathways. So in all, we're pretty excited about the way that it's going to go, and we feel that we're starting to get those steps into place. So we're looking forward to hearing everybody else's steps and the way that they do that as well. I think one of the, and just to finish, one of the things that really brought home the importance of what we do in this space was we had one of the new regional bowls managers listening to one of our para athletes last week, and he stood up at the end and he was quite emotional, and he sort of said, look, I just want to thank you for sharing your story. The athlete spoke about how he was in a pretty dark place because he thought he was going to be a rugby star, and then he had a disease that took his ability away to be a rugby star. And now he's going off to the Commonwealth Games. But the regional bowls manager stood up and he said, I just want to thank you. He said, because what you do is give me hope. My son gets bullied at school. He's not the football star. He's not all these other things. But he said, he loves bowls and he loves watching you and what you do. And your story has just given me all the hope in the world. So I think, we have all these different things, but stories like that are the things that really make the difference, and they're the things that we should measure our success on as much as what we should measure it on gold medals. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. Our next speaker is Christy Rohrer, who's our National Manager for our Active Inclusion Sport Days at Disability Sports Australia. Christy started off in her own sporting world, reaching a high level of football/soccer. She's also spent some time working at Cricket New South Wales, which is where her passion for working in the disability sector really came to the forefront. She now heads up our Active Inclusion Sport Days, and I was really hoping you could share some stories about that if you can, Christy.
Thanks, Craig. Good afternoon. My name is Christy Rohrer, and as Craig said, I am the National Manager of Activate Inclusion Sports Days here at Disability Sports Australia. Today I'm going to run you through a brief overview of what the program is, a little bit on participation, why we run the days, and also what's the next step after a child attends an Activate Inclusion Sports Day. So essentially, the days are a come and try for kids who are 5 to 18 with sensory, physical or intellectual disabilities. They get to try 4 to 6 sports on the day. Sports are all adapted and fully inclusive of all children who attend. I'm going to play a little short video for you so you can get a bit more of an experience, an in-depth look at what the days are like.
Types of disabilities to different levels of modified sport.
Variety believes very strongly in inclusion, equality and well-being for all kids, along with a big dose of fun, and that's why we're very proud to be part of Activate Inclusion Sports Days.
This is the right environment to be able to bring students with disabilities out of their shell, to be able to create more confidence and to be able to have them really enjoy the experience of being active. And it doesn't matter if they didn't kick the ball right the first time or the second or the third time, they kept on trying to have a go. And that's the important thing to take away from a day like this.
When people are playing sport together, they're not thinking about who's that person, what station in life, what disability, etc. They're just another person playing sport. Sport is a great leveller, and as they play more of it, they gain confidence. And for kids who may not have a lot of confidence, that's really important. We hope some kids not only go on and participate longer term in sport, but maybe, you never know, in Paralympics going forward.
For me, as a child, I didn't realise that there was other students with disabilities. So for them to be able to come into this setting, learn about adaptations that they can take back to their school, with their peers, with their teachers, and also learn that they're not alone and that there is pathways for them to succeed in sport is really exciting.
So as you can see, our days are all about fun. Getting the kids out, being active, lots of smiles on their faces, building their confidence and wanting them to be involved in sport more and more often. Next slide, please, Maddie. So participation at our days, we started this event in 2015 just in New South Wales, and we started with 5 events. Since then, we've had about 10,000 kids through the program, and we'll be running about 50 nationwide this year. 2021, we launched nationally, so we went to the Northern Territory and also South Australia, and then this year we're heading to Victoria, Western Australia, and also Tasmania, which is next week. As you can see by the graph on the screen, we've slowly increased participation year on year. 2020 and 2021 were obviously COVID-affected years, but we still had some registrations there. We weren't actually able to go out and run any programs, unfortunately. But we've bounced back really, really well in 2022 with over 3,500 registrations already, and that's without Term 4-1 programs even being promoted. So we're looking to reach around 5,000 kids this year alone, which is fantastic. Next slide, please, Maddie. So why do we run these days and why they're so important? A bit like Renee was saying earlier, we always think about that why. And when I was putting this presentation together, I was trying to think of the words to convey that message to you, and just it wasn't really coming to me. And then I thought of an email that was sent to me by a parent whose son had attended a day in Victoria recently, and I thought she summed it up better than I ever could. So I'm just going to share that email with you now. Just bear with me, it's a little bit lengthy, but I think it's really important and conveys that message perfectly. So hi Christy, I wanted to reach out and say a big thank you for the work you and your team have put into these accessible sports days. My son attended yesterday with his dad and he had such a wonderful day. Sports accessibility and inclusivity has long been things he has craved and needed in his world. And up until recently, finding avenues to access inclusive sports for our son has been challenging. These events have not only inspired him to give accessible and inclusive sports a go, they have also shown him what's possible and given him hope, inspiration, motivation, and drive. He has gone from feeling like he'll never be like everyone else, never be able to win, and always different, to now seeing himself represented, included, and cheered on. He is understanding that his disability isn't something that will always hold him back, as he previously felt, and that despite his disability and the challenges he faces, there are avenues for him where he can still have a go and succeed. Understanding that there are a community of others who experience similar challenges as he does, who represent him and others like him, will continue to be a game changer for him as he grows. Despite us cheering him on and telling him all these things constantly over the years, it has taken him being a part of these events and the experience of being seen, encouraged, and included to really cement this for him. As a mother, seeing her son light up like he has after these last 2 events, there are no words to properly express my deep gratitude for the opportunities, events, and for the people who run these. These events are so important for our kids. Thank you so much. I don't know about you guys, that really had a really deep impact on me when I read it. Working at Disability Sports Australia for the last year, I've come across a lot of barriers that kids are facing when participating in sport. But the number one barrier that I keep coming over and over again is the participant themselves. They lack the confidence. They don't feel like they can do it. They think they're going to fail. They think they're going to let their teammates down. So to hear that our events can change a mindset of a child like that is really, really powerful, and I just really wanted to share that with you as to why it's so important that we get these days out there. Next slide, please, Maddie. Okay, so the next step. We want these days to be sustainable. We don't want these kids to turn up, run, be included in one day and then not come back for another year. We want to transition these kids into our local community programs. So before each participant attends a day, they'll complete a pre-event survey. So in this survey, we collect data such as name, age, disability type, whether they currently play sport, what sports they'd like to try, and also there's a section down the bottom which says, would you like to continue to play sport after this day? If they tick that section and leave their details, they are then sent into our National Referral Hub. So our National Referral Hub team will then look at their disability type, where they're located, and the sports they'd like to try. They then link the participant or their parent or their carer with opportunities in their local area. So as a parent of a child with a disability myself, I know how difficult it can be to find those inclusive options in your area. You can be bounced around from person to person to person and end up back at square one. So what the National Referral Hub is doing is taking that third party out of it and directly linking you to those opportunities in your area. Also included in that is our adaptation and inclusion certification. So we don't want to send a child out to a club who claims that they're inclusive and then send them out to have a really bad experience. So all the clubs on our National Referral Hub will go through our adaptation and inclusion certification so that we are safe in the knowledge that when we send these participants out into the community, we know that they're going to have a really great experience and want to come back and play sport. Because the last thing we want to do is send kids out and they have a bad experience, lose all their confidence and don't come back again. So that's basically how we get our kids into community sport in the area. Next one. Okay, so if you'd like to be involved in an Activate Inclusion Sports Day, if you're a council and you'd like to host a day, if you're a sport and you want to join in, or if you just want to volunteer and come and check one out, our volunteers have such a great time, always leave with a smile on their face and actually come back and visit us again. So there are my contact details. Feel free to reach out. We've also just launched our Facebook page as well, which is Activate Inclusion Sports Days. So give us a follow. It has all the updates on the events that are coming up throughout the country and also lots of videos and smiling faces of kids that will make your day. So thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Yeah, I'll rove because I'm hoping to make this a little bit interactive. So I'm hoping we've got some questions in the audience that we can fire off to our ladies on the stage. I must admit, I've still got a little lump in the throat from the email. Anyone got any questions for any of our three people on the stage? You're going to make me run right up the top, aren't you?
I was just wondering, in terms of the National Referral Hub, so I've been involved with a few of the variety Activate Inclusion Sports Days, love them, amazing day. But so I represent Football Queensland and we're probably not as progressed in the all ability space as I'd like to be, and I'm trying to help push that. But I guess we're asked to then provide some information to Variety that they share with the kids, and I always feel super guilty because we don't necessarily have fantastic programs currently already set up in every location that Variety does visit. And so I guess if we've got clubs that are potentially interested in joining that National Referral Hub and, given the support to do that, I guess, what's that process and how can I sort of encourage my clubs to do that?
Yeah, most definitely. I think the best probably option is to go through the National Referral Hub email. Just email them and mention that you have local clubs that are interested in becoming inclusive programs. The first step is to go through the adaptation and inclusion certification so that we know that they're going to have all the tools and all the knowledge required. But Disability Sports Australia is there as well to offer support all through the process. So if there's any questions after you've completed the certification, we're there to support you through the whole process because we want these programs to be in every area. So every day that we run an Activate Inclusion, there's going to be an inclusive program that we can transition these kids over to. Variety Queensland actually look after the Activate Inclusion days in Queensland, so I can't speak on them in terms of what data collection and things that they have, but I assume they'll do a similar process.
Any other questions?
Thanks. The importance of the pre-event survey for you as an organisation, one, understanding your participants, but two, what other information do you get out of it? Because we've done that in certain programs as a sport, but we don't do it holistically. So I'd be keen to understand your learnings from that.
So after each quarter, we provide, with the data that we've collected, we provide a report to council and also our partners as well. Not only does it capture your disability types, so whether you've got physical, sensory or intellectual disabilities, it's also female to male, whether you play sport in school and whether you play sport in community. So we found that in school, we're getting 80 to 90% kids participate in school, and then when you look at community rates, you're down at 25%. So capturing data like that is important, but there's also things in our survey such as, do you access your state sporting organisation vouchers, so you activate inclusion, active kids vouchers in New South Wales, etc. So again, that's another thing we can go back to your councils about and say, hey, you've got X amount of kids in your area who have an active kids voucher but haven't used them. Can we put on a program in this area? Because there's obviously a gap. So that's probably the biggest data that we use in terms of we can use it as power to go back to council and say we need programs in these areas. There's gaps.
Any other questions? I was keen to throw one at you. Oh, we do? I was just going to say to Renee, we talked about this before, the lessons learnt when you were sort of thrown in the deep end, and it was that we can share, because I think more valuable than anything is if we've learnt something that someone else doesn't fall down the same. Any spring to mind?
Yeah. So when FSG went into receivership, it was effective immediately. So we couldn't even contact the person that was helping us organise, from FSG's point of view, all of the programs that we're running. We had everybody's contact details, but and obviously had a Facebook page and a WhatsApp group and all of the above to be able to communicate with them. But I suppose it's just understanding all of the other stuff outside of just going to training and playing. It was the employment pathways which have all of a sudden were gone because FSG wasn't there to supply that support. It was also the intricacies between intellectual and physical disability. How do they interact? What's the best way to work with them during a training session? Should they be separate? Should they be together? So, look, we made some mistakes, but I suppose it makes you value it more when you've gotten to the point where the program's grown so much. I suppose the biggest bit of advice was I just called on every single person I knew that worked in this space, and was so lucky that someone like Dr. Dinesh Palapana, Dr. Gaj, who's also a specialist that's in Brisbane, I just sort of said, we need help, we need advice. We don't want this program to fall over. We can see how much good that it's doing. It's bigger than the Gold Coast Titans. It's about the community and how we can provide an opportunity for them to play. And all of a sudden the cavalry arrived and we got all the support that we needed. And no question's a silly question. I just asked every single question I could to make sure that we provided the best, first of all, duty of care to our players, because we're playing a high contact sport. And second of all, what are the other social and emotional outcomes in and around playing a sport of a high level of contact? And how do we work with the families and parents and carers to have that support 24/7? It's not just about training and playing. It's a 7-day-a-week being part of the program. So we made sure that we hopefully worked with the right people, and seeing where the program's at now, we're very lucky to have those people involved.
Fiona, question for you. You mentioned there were some stakeholders Bowls Australia had to work with who were involved with blind bowls, deaf bowls, etc. How did you go about bringing them together to be part of that journey that you're on?
Well, we're in that process of bringing them together. So we have the conversations, but it tends to be sort of quite segregated. So, and I had a conversation with somebody earlier. I think one of the challenges with diversity and inclusion across the board is first of all recognising that there is diversity. So sometimes people like to be with people that are like-minded. So if we're talking about gender, sometimes it's nice just to get the girls together or to get the guys together. And it's the same, it's the same for everybody. You like to be with somebody and talk about the same things because you've got the same challenges and you've got the same good parts about what you do as well. So it's recognising that, but then bringing it together in inclusion. So we want to try, the first thing is just getting everybody talking. So making sure that there's a conversation in the room between everybody so that we can share that common ground and to get that multidiscipline competition happening. We would like to see a lot more integration. I think that bowls really lends itself to making sure that everybody can play in the same competition. And that story that I told about the Australian Open, to me, I think that's one of the most amazing things about our sport. And it is the type of thing that we want to bring together. And I think that that leads to a level of achievement that is there for everybody. So it means that you're not just being the best in your township in that space, you're actually the best in your township full stop, or you're the best in your state full stop, and you've got that opportunity. So yeah, look, I think that the first part for us is just getting it all down on our website, so that if you're coming in from somewhere else, you can go, okay, well, I'd like to, I'm in a wheelchair, where can I bowl? So having those icons on our system, so that people can go in and actually understand where someone is that is friendly for people that are in a wheelchair, so that it's easier for them. Who's got wheelchair access? Who's got perhaps a coach that may be in a wheelchair? So all those types of things. So we're trying to actually get that rating system nationally for everybody. So have that so that it's a very easy, seamless way to be.
I was just going to add to that question though. It was that one of the absolute drivers for the National Referral Hub was the research from parents, is that it's a complex environment with lots of stakeholders. So the whole point of the Referral Hub is just trying to take a little bit of that complexity out, and there's a place to go where you can connect and link. So again, that was some of the research we were hearing that drove the National Referral Hub.
Great stories, excellent to hear. Probably a question to Renee, the sort of twofold. Obviously, you've got some pretty phenomenal facilities down your way, and also you mentioned that as a result of the program, the commercial input that's come in as a result, and obviously how that's benefiting the program, but also has that the impact on the facilities. So you're catering for a whole different group of people than what it was originally designed for. So what are the adaptations you've had to do with that, and has the commercial flow on also supported the physical environment as much as the program?
Yeah, definitely. I think the first step is we've realised we've outgrown our current facility with 60 league ability players, an NRLW team, 2 netball teams and an NRL team. We really need to work for our next step as to how our facilities are going to be set up. But I suppose the great thing for us, which we're so lucky, is that our brand lends itself to be able to showcase our program a little bit easier than some other brands, which doesn't make it fair. But I suppose we're just trying to make the most of that happening. And that means we get council support, upgrades of facilities come probably a bit quicker and easier than most other sports. But the way that I feel like that we can somewhat counteract that is, not counteract that, but be thankful and grateful of the extra levels of support that we get because of our brand, is by taking Ethan, taking Chris, taking our tribe to conferences and speaking about employment pathways. Because the biggest thing for us is that we've provided them a physical outlet, but we're only with them a couple of days a week. What about the rest of the week? Like, they want a job. They want to feel connected to community. So Ethan and Chris, I'm like a designated Uber driver where I just take them to conference after conference where they go and speak to organisations and our sponsors and our stakeholders about why it is so important and wonderful to employ people with disabilities. So in my mind, I'm like, we're so lucky. We've got to work out a way that we can build on this brand. And yeah, that's probably the best way of doing it. But moving forward, our next facilities, we'll be working with a lot of people to make sure that everybody's properly catered for.
All right, we might wrap things up. If you could join me in a big round of applause for our 3 panellists. Thank you, Renee, Fiona and Christy. And I think we're pretty much diving into the next session. So
so like depending on the group, I could never guarantee. And my boss goes, "Do you practice?" I was like, "No, there's no use practicing." Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Killing me softly with this song. Killing me softly with this song. Strumming my pain with his fingers. Singing my life with his words. Killing me softly with this song. Killing me softly with this song.
Well, welcome back, everyone. If I can get you to grab your seats, we're ready for our final panel of the day. And this is one I know you're all going to really enjoy. I could read extensive bios on my 5 guests for this panel, but I'm not going to do that because not only are they familiar to you, they are going to share their own stories and tell you their experiences in their own words. So would you please welcome to the stage from wheelchair racing, Louise Savage, wheelchair rugby, Chris Bond, para-triathlon, Katie Kelly, para-alpine skiing, Melissa Perrine, and para-swimming, Blake Cochran. Welcome. Lou, by virtue of the fact that you happen to sit right next to me right here, you get to start. Aren't you lucky? Yes. You knew I was going to pick on you. Can you perhaps, all of you, start by sharing your experiences, sharing your story? Tell us where you started in sport and tell us what sport means in your life. So just, a few minutes.
That's a lot. I'll probably ask you what was it, but I started, I went to a regular primary school and participated in sport as much as I could. I've had my disability since birth, so I don't know any different. And it wasn't until I was introduced into wheelchair sports, I was asked to come to a Come and Try Day. And that's how I got involved in wheelchair sports, and I did everything and anything that I could actually get my hands on. So it was a lot of fun, and I suppose I never really looked back. Now been to a number of Paralympics and represented Australia. So what was the other questions you asked me?
She's been to a couple of Paralympics and represented Australia. Just a bit of an understatement there, Lou. What does it mean to you in your life? What has sport meant?
Well, sport is everything. I'm still currently involved, obviously, with my chosen sport. I can't imagine a life without sport. My life still revolves around a 4-year cycle, although it wasn't quite 4 years, the last one. But yeah, I'm still involved. So I think it's given me so much. Obviously, the experiences, the ability to travel, see the world, make friends, and just, I suppose, life experiences more than anything. Sport's given me so many opportunities for what I do now, but also for the future. Who knew that I'd still be involved at this level and doing what I do now and what I love. And I had a lot of success as an athlete, but now I get to be part of someone else's journey, and I get even more of a buzz out of that. And it's so much more rewarding coaching as well. So yeah, I'm just grateful for the sporting environment in the world, and yeah, where would I be without it? I don't know.
Absolutely. You are one of the most competitive people that I know. Did you start like that as a kid?
Unfortunately, yes. Just slightly competitive in just about everything. But yeah, it hasn't hurt me too much.
Mel, tell us how you got into sport. I'm guessing that sport didn't start with para-alpine skiing?
No, I definitely didn't start with alpine skiing at all. I started my sporting life as a gymnast when I was about 4 years old because I was incredibly spatially inept, being born with my vision. So my mother, who was also an athlete, she basically decided that, sport's the answer to everything, and it essentially fixed my development issues that a lot of sensory disabilities actually lead on to. So helped with spatial awareness, and I just loved it. I fell in love with sport from that point in time, and I've never been not involved in sport since then, basically. And I've tried a lot of different things. I went from gymnastics to swimming, horse riding, judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, mixed martial arts. My brother used me as a soccer goalkeeper. Apparently it was awesome for him. And then I found alpine skiing through a come and try kind of day or camp when I was about 13, and fell in love with the mountains and the freedom that it gave me that a lot of visually impaired people never get to experience. It gave me a level of independence and joy that I don't think I found in anything else in my life. That led to, travelling the world for 13, 14 odd years and competing at the top level of my sport, which I'm so happy and grateful for.
The Come and Try Day is a theme that we hear a lot. Is that still to you, is that the basis of how we get the message that there's sport out there?
I think education is a big You know, a lot of disabled athletes, I grew up in the country, so disabled sport was not a thing in my community. I was the only visually impaired student at my high school and primary school. So I was a little bit of an anomaly then. None of my coaches had ever dealt with a visually impaired athlete before. So I feel like Come and Try Days are the avenue, like one of the easiest avenues that we have to educate not only, you know, the mainstream population, but the disability community, that these sports are available and they are accessible. And even if it's a mainstream sport that doesn't appear like it has accessible features, there are avenues out there for us to explore that, and just our abilities, our disabilities shouldn't be a barrier to exploring that. And I think Come and Try Days play that part quite well.
Thanks, Mel. Chris Bond, tell us, murder ball wasn't the first thing you tried. Tell us, please. You started something gentler, surely. Be kind to your mother.
Well, I'm an identical twin, so I think in the womb we were kind of tackling each other a little bit. But again, very competitive in nature from that, being in a twin, and that led very nicely into sport. I remember in business studies in year 10, I did a resume and I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And for me, it was represent Australia in sport. No idea it'd be a para sport or wheelchair rugby at the time. I was playing rugby league. But yeah, when I acquired my disability, going through rehabilitation, and there was something missing, and it was that being in that team environment and playing sport and competing again. And I said to the rehab, you know, what sports can I do? What's on offer for me and my disability? I had no idea. And they said, oh, probably none except swimming. Now, I've always been a land mammal, as I like to say. I can't breathe underwater. I don't know how Blake does it. But, you know, I gave it a crack.
You can breathe underwater.
Good point. Anyway, I couldn't get the breathing down pat. But look, I gave it a crack. Was pretty horrible at it, to be honest, but it was my first step towards getting into a sport, and I was just very lucky. I was at the AIS gym doing some weights there, and the rugby coach came in and said, "You're probably eligible for wheelchair rugby." I said, "What is that? It sounds amazing." I grew up playing rugby league. First time I jumped in a chair and hit someone, that was a sport for me.
Tell us, what has sport meant in your life, both before and after you acquired a disability? Is there a difference, or is that the level, or is that the thing that remains something that remains true to you regardless?
Personally, I think it was my identity. You know, I grew up in a suburban area, a new suburban area, and we'd, you know, walk to school and then do sport before school. And then at recess, we'd play sport. At lunch, we'd play footy. After school, we'd do school sport, and the weekends, we'd play club sport. And that was my life, was an athlete growing up. Things have changed a little bit now with this generation, but yeah, and then I really missed that when I acquired my disability and wanted to get back into it. And through sport, you know, I've met my partner, who's also a Paralympic athlete. We met at the Paralympic Games. I now work in sport, and I volunteer on a number of organisations and boards and committees in sport. It's kind of consumed my life, but at the end of the day, it's kind of my purpose and my identity is in sport.
Blake Cochran, according to Chris Bond, you swim without breathing. Talk to us about your experiences and how you became an elite swimmer.
Yeah, I guess for me, my story is that I have a congenitally acquired limb deficiency of all 4 limbs, and for me growing up, I've always had a very strong love and passion for the water. So I guess my swimming career essentially started once I was too big for doing laps in the bathtub. So I've been swimming since I was about 2 years old. But I guess for me, my journey in a way is potentially a little bit different from a lot of my peers, because I guess my parents were probably a little bit more protective of me and sheltered me from that side of disability. They didn't necessarily want to give me any excuse to want to consider myself any different from anybody else. And I'm probably pretty fortunate because I'm quite high functioning in what I can do. But for me, I was never exposed to Paralympic sport. I was never exposed to disability activities. I was never given the opportunity to go to Come and Try Days or things like that. And so for me, growing up, my childhood wasn't like any other, and my opportunities was the same as my, I guess, able-bodied peers. And so it wasn't until I sort of got through my high school and got to year 10 that my opportunities came through school sport. And so now I am very biased towards what we can offer in our school system and how much we can develop and become an incredible person because of the opportunities that come through school and come through education and what we can get out of that. But for me, my athletic journey and my journey to 4 Paralympic Games and multiple medals along the way wouldn't be what it is without school sport. And I guess without having that exposure to disability or Paralympic sport at a very young age, for me it was about having fun and enjoying that involvement in that participation. And I was never competitive to make those extremely high Division 1s or things like that in soccer, rugby or any of those bits and pieces, but I enjoyed that competitiveness that came with sport. And so I find it really interesting. I do lots of school talks and things like that. And the one thing that I kind of really try and convey to particularly high school students is that when you're in high school, you spend so much time trying to kind of be the same as everybody else and trying to fit in with your peers. But once you become an adult, you're honestly just looking for the way that you stand out from everybody else and can be able to present your best self to be that individual. And so for me, that's something that I've really come to learn, how incredible a person with a disability, or being the people that we are, can actually really do some pretty amazing and incredible things, not only in the sporting arena, but what we offer to every part of our society that comes with that.
Beautifully put, Blake. I'm curious to know when you realised, and a common thread of today has been talking about how important it is that sport is fun for kids and they have that enjoyment, the fitness, the friendship, all those aspects. When did it strike you that you wanted to be a Paralympian?
Well, as I said, I never watched any Paralympic sport or anything like that. And
thanks for your support.
I went along to a swimming carnival to compete against my peers at school, and one of my teachers said, "Hey, have you ever done multi-class or multi-disability sport at that stage?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Well, you can go on to the next level if you want to." And I said, "Well, what does that entail?" And they said, "Well, next Wednesday you'll go to Caboolture and you'll compete." And I said, "Another day off school, sign me up." So I went to regionals, and then I got another day off school to go to states, and then another day off, a week off school to go to nationals. And that was, I guess, for me, a little bit I enjoy school, but it also meant that I got to travel. And so for me, that's where that kind of opportunity started. And I did win a medal at my first nationals, and that, I guess, sparked that competitive edge. And then I went along to a come and try day, and the coach said, "Where have you been?" And that's where my pathway started at 17 years of age, even though I've been swimming all my life.
So when you do the school talks, do you tell them it's all about getting days off?
I do tell a particular story that centres around that, but I do say at the end of the day I'm a student athlete. It takes a little bit longer to explain, but I won't bore the details right now.
Fair enough. Katie Kelly, tell us about your experiences, because you very much started in sport because that's where you thrived, right?
Yes and no. Like I never thought that I would go to a Paralympics. I was just, love sports like a lot of young Aussie kids in a country town. And my condition is a condition called Usher syndrome. So I've got profound hearing loss. I wear hearing aids. And so what Blake was saying, probably my whole young life, sport for me was where I could feel included and not different. Whereas in the classroom, my speech and my learnings was a bit delayed. But on the sporting field, nobody noticed. So I guess for me, that's where sport just made me feel like everybody else and felt included. And I'd have to say that I would try and hide my hearing loss and hide my disability so I didn't feel like I was different. And it was the Paralympic movement that allowed me to really express myself and be comfortable that I had Usher syndrome because I've got tunnel vision and I'm legally blind. So when you talk about what does sport mean to me, it means so much more than that participation, playing with your mates, etc. It's also, for young children, it's about being included, not feeling different. But then in my adult life, to experience the Paralympic movement, I went to Rio and in paratriathlon in Tokyo, and I came into it at the age of 39 and retired at 47. So I kind of did it the other way around. but that was because of my eyesight deteriorating, and it was all just about timing. And I came along and they said, "Hey, Katie, we're looking for triathletes for Rio." But what I wanted to say was, I guess for me, the power of sport and what it's done for me is allowed me to set up a foundation called Sport Access Foundation. We give out grants for kids with disability. And so I very much feel a strong sense of the role of sport in inclusion, in justice, in equity, in opportunity, in growth for young Aussies with disability, to be empowered, to live independent lives, etc. And it's just wonderful to see more investment in our young kids to bring them along. So is that, kind of answer where we were heading?
So I sort of, when you were talking about being 37, 39, my mind wandered. So you weren't doing a come and try day at 40 or something?
Yeah. I was like Sharon off Kath and Kim, probably. No, it was... so I always did like swimming and netball and whatever. And I did Sydney Morning Herald half marathon. I did the New York Marathon in my 30s. And I went to Norway and did the Midnight Sun Marathon because I was legally blind. I can't see at night. And I thought, where can I run at midnight when it's broad daylight and there's summertime? So I was always very active, definitely a weekend warrior. And I've always worked in sports, so National Rugby League, etc., and involved in Deaf Sports Australia and all that sort of thing. So it just was circumstances with my disability and my pathway, which says too that, obviously peak performance comes in the younger years, etc. But the wonderful thing about the Paralympics, as you guys know, sometimes people who get their disabilities only a couple of years or so before a Games. So I think it is about sports being open to different types of pathways and people's different life stages when they might come in and hit their peak at 39. It is possible.
Hello, gold medal in Rio, yes. Before we open it to our audience here and everyone can ask whatever questions they like, and I'm really sorry, I'd like to move this flag so I can see you all. I'd just like to hear from each of you what accessibility means to you, because it's a word being thrown around a lot as we talk about this runway to 2032 and it needs to be accessible. What does accessibility mean to you, and what adaptations do you have to make or have to be made for you to be able to go about your daily life or compete in your sport, or things that could be improved that you still find a struggle even after all these years? And Katie, I'm just reminded of a radio interview that we did together, and Katie got in touch with me later and said, "Oh, do you have the program that can transcribe the words so that my friends who are deaf can read the transcript?" And I went back to the radio station and said, "Why don't we have this? It's actually stupid that we don't." And it created a whole conversation. It's very slow moving, but it created a whole conversation. I thought, these are things that should exist already. So if each of you can share with us what your experiences are about what accessibility means to you as a whole and what adaptations you make that you would like to see improved.
So I'll just give two examples. There's a young girl, Maddie Sandlers, who's 19 at University of Queensland. She's got my gold medal Rio bike, which I fundraised $30,000 when I was 39, 40. And I could do that because I knew people, engaged my community. Triathlon Australia didn't have the funding for that bike. So that's an additional cost for a high-performance athlete. And then I had to get a second bike for Tokyo because I had a shorter guide, another $20,000, $30,000. I went out to different people that second time around. So I'm really grateful I can give Maggie that bike. She's hoping to make 2032. So that's just an example. As a high-performance athlete on the pathway, she doesn't have a tandem bike. She's a uni student. I'm able to give her that. But that's what sports administrators and that need to think about, are those extra additional costs that there are. Plus she needs a guide who can train with her 5-6 days a week. We want her to be in Brisbane and winning that gold medal. She is capable of it, but she needs a lot of extra support and resources. So it's just thinking about those things. And then I guess from a recreational point of view, because I'm now a recreational athlete, right? I'm retired, is my swimming pool nearby at Palm Beach Aquatic Centre is closed for 18 months for redevelopment. So I swim in this old ladies group. They're all 50 plus, love it, and everyone just chats the whole time and everything. Anyway, we've now moved to another little swimming centre up the road. It's small, it's quite dark in the morning. There's a lot of people in the lane. Because of my vision loss, I struggle. And I had to say to Vicky, the coach, look, it's just too hard. I can't do this anymore. So I now miss out on that. So for me to get to the next pool is a $35 taxi ride there and back. So a swim for me can cost $70, right? That's okay, I can pay for it, etc. But that's a barrier for me. So I get NDIS funding and it's tremendous. But these are the little things that are the additional barriers if you have a challenge, disability. And I go, is that swim worth it for me? I can't do that 3 days a week. So I've got to look for alternatives, which is fine, which again points to accessibility is sort of that line of how much we have to continually adopt and modify to access things, or how much can program services just sort of think about being more inclusive. So just to wrap that up, that little swimming centre, I got to know the owner, Sky, quite well, and I buddied up with her because she introduced me to this little 5-year-old blind girl that swims in her squad. She's gorgeous, and I'm like, yeah, you got to go to the Paralympics. Anyway, I talked to Sky on the side, and I said, hey, do you reckon I could access the pool, you know, in after hours and da-da-da-da-da? And she's like, of course, we can make that happen. So I was able to have that conversation with her. She was able to be flexible in her business model to accommodate that. And that's true accessibility too. So to wrap that up, I think it's about service providers also just having that flexibility and seeing why people aren't there and why they might have dropped off, because there are other reasons for it.
Can I just say I'm offended by the fact that I'm 50 and I fit into her old ladies swimming group? What's that about, Katie? Thanks. Baby-faced Blake, tell us, what does accessibility look like for you? What adaptations do you require, and what could be done better in your world?
Look, I'll try and keep this brief. For me, I am quite high functioning. Basically, the only assistance I need is a prosthetic leg. However, I've been dabbling in a little bit of wheelchair rugby and come to learn very quickly how much a wheelchair can cost just for a sporting chair, which you only use for a specific activity. So I can appreciate the cost that comes with that. But I'm in a few advisory groups for 2032, and the words that keep getting thrown around are accessibility, but also universal access, and creating those facilities that anyone can access with kind of no questions asked, and not need to necessarily front up to those issues that prevent people from actually accessing those particular space. And I guess true inclusivity is when we don't need to use that word. It's just something that will just happen, and we don't need to have all these conversations around it. But I guess the way that we can get there is particularly focusing in on using our experts. So not only people with lived experience, but also trusting the industry experts of those particular construction and building and design and all those things that play into that picture of designing a new building, or modifications or things that kind of go into that picture. And co-design for me isn't simply just, let's consult this group and say, let's put together some ideas and, okay, we've got your feedback, let's go. It's co-design from start to finish. It's giving that opportunity to give that feedback to the brief. It's giving that feedback to actually come in and test it and try it. And then it's giving feedback on that final actual execution of that particular plan. And I think that's the way we get that process to happen. And those facilities, they have to start at the airport. So when people first get off the plane, the first thing they come into is something that is completely accessible to all. And there's so many things in that world that we'd be stuck here for a very long time to talk about all those things that they include.
Get Louise Savage started on what's wrong with air travel, and we'll be here all afternoon. Chris Bond, I reckon you'd share some of her thoughts. Tell us your opinions around accessibility and adaptation and very expensive sports chairs, and I imagine very expensive prosthetics.
Yeah, there is a lot to talk to on this issue. I guess probably for me the biggest one is choice. So, you know, I acquired my disability and I didn't have any choice of what sport was out there because I didn't know where to go or what was available. And that was from me growing up in Canberra, the capital city, let alone regional Australia. So I think first and foremost, a way we can, anyone with a disability can find what's available in their community is probably the first thing to break down accessibility. Obviously cost is a big one, a big barrier to access sport. You know, high performance sport, it's so niche. Us as athletes, everything's made custom to the T, specific for our competition. And that's what's needed in high performance sport, that 5% difference. But even, you know, at a club level, like for Blake to come and try wheelchair rugby, we had we had to throw together a wheel from one chair, a frame from another, a pick bar from another to even get him to even try the sport. So, I guess more equipment that's sort of generalised so people can come and try a sport, because it costs a lot to invest yourself in one, and that's a massive barrier for parents and people. They're not going to go and spend $10,000, $20,000 to try a sport they might not even like.
And as far as accessibility goes, for you, what does that mean as a whole?
I think it's just about creating environments where, it's inclusive for everyone. And how do you do that? Well, you either have someone that's trained and knows about disability at an organisation, or you sit down and listen to what their needs are and try and adapt. It can't be too hard. It shouldn't be too hard.
Do you feel like there's enough listening going on?
I think like the start of this and a national conference on disability sport is pretty amazing. The people in this room and the influence that you all have to go away from this and make change, especially here in Queensland, the runway to 32, like if not now, when? It just won't happen. So yeah, pretty exciting times for us as athletes. I don't know, Katie, I'll be 46 in Brisbane, so I might try and stick around, but we'll be probably watching from our lounge chairs and knowing that we made a very, very small difference and wave to the noise that's about to happen.
No, I want to see you all out there competing. Find another sport if you got to. Mel Perrine, talk to us.
So I think accessibility to me looks like me not needing to Google a place before I go there to figure out where the hell everything is. For me to be able to go somewhere or interact with a new sport, a new environment, a new population without having to, have to ask random questions, like not random questions, just specific questions like, where's the bathroom? Where's the doorway? How many stairs am I going to have to trip down to get into this place? It's literally having that knowledge readily available and accessible without having to go hunting through the depths of Google or interviewing 5 people just to find out. I know a lot of people with disabilities don't go places or don't try to go places because it's simply too hard. And that's really hard, especially for the members of our community that are low functioning. They have no access to a lot of different sports, communities, movie theatres, stadiums, simply because the access isn't there. To me, accessibility looks like those people having access to those things. One of the ski resorts in Australia has a disabled toilet. That's great. It's upstairs. So, very useful. You get it. And I suppose, my general barriers, if anyone out there in planning infrastructure could never, ever, ever design a staircase with all the same coloured stairs again, that would be great. Thank you. I fall up and down stairs like nobody's business because there's no contrast to them. That is a massive barrier for me that I encounter on a daily basis. It may look good, but it's dangerous.
Mel, I know we sit here and we have a giggle. It's actually disgraceful that things like that are still happening, and they're things that athletes are still dealing with and people living with any sort of disability still dealing with, because we need to aim towards a life where that is not the case. But the adaptations that you have to make for your sport, tell us about the specifics that you need to compete.
So I need a guide who can dedicate as much time to the sport as I can. Unfortunately, historically, guides have not been funded like athletes. They're complete volunteers. It's getting better, but those guides give as much time as elite athletes and are given zero recognition, basically. Whereas my guide is my partner. I can't do my sport without her. So my big adaptation is a guide that is as skilled, if not more skilled, at my sport as me, and being a winter athlete in a summer country, that's really quite hard to find. And then that also comes with a very, very high cost. Not only am I having to deal with specialised race equipment for myself, as well as Bluetooth communication systems and high contrast clothing and things of that nature. We also have to make that my guide needs to be on the same equipment. She needs to be on the same high performance skis, the same like not like aerodynamic clothing, all that kind of stuff. So it's not just the cost of one person's equipment, it's two people have to have that same high level of cost equipment. And people, a visually impaired athlete coming into my sport, can't afford that. It's incredibly expensive. Traveling overseas for as long as we do every year, even accessing Perisher or Threadbow, you know, a family or two people can need to spend $5,000 for a weekend. When you throw two people at that, that's, you know, potentially $10,000 for, you know, a weekend or 4 days on snow for someone to try. However, you know, organisations, NDIS, Blind Sports New South Wales, who are running winter camps at the moment, are making those things accessible, and that's the start of something that could be really powerful for my sporting community moving forward. I'm sorry, summer guys, you've had the spotlight for a while now, it's our turn.
Fair shout, Mel. Louise Savage, would you like to start with toilets, airports, corporate suites? Tell us, what does accessibility look like to you?
How much time we got?
Yeah, I'll cut you off.
I think I'm pretty similar to a lot of people. Obviously, like a few of the guys, physical access is probably one of the biggest things for me. Obviously, I use a chair for everyday life, but so that's probably the main thing. And don't worry about stairs, just don't do them. It's fine.
Not everywhere has ramps, I'm sure
really?
you know.
But within my sport, of course, there's the equipment costs, which I think come across really widely with these guys as well. And I have a thing where we recycle everything, and we try and, you know, get the kids into chairs that other people, and, you know, the guys that get sponsored, they give their chairs up once they finish using them, and I'm always looking for something for someone. So that's how we get the kids involved, or adults, newly acquired injuries. It doesn't really matter. I'm always looking for a chair or equipment for those guys, and second-hand gloves. Never throw out a pair of harness gloves. They're so expensive. Things like that I suppose is really hard to get, as you said, to just try the sport. It's very difficult, and I want them to have the best experience because I want them to come back. So it is very difficult for that. I think access to facilities as well. We were just talking about this before we came up here. You know, like you were saying, Bonnie, before Paralympics, they couldn't get court time, and that's just ridiculous when you think about it. You just think, wow, I'm going to represent my country, but I cannot get on the court. And for us, we can't get on the track. You know, and it sounds really stupid, but, you know, there's school carnivals almost every day, and then after they have general training, and we can't train during general training. So things like that, because it's just not possible and it's dangerous. So for us, facilities, having those facilities accessible in terms of, you know, just actually getting in there without stairs and storage and things like that, and bathrooms and all those things, and the minimum is usually what is presented to any stadium or anywhere that we go. So, and I think the minimum is just not good enough anymore. And I love what you were saying, Blake, and it's, for me, it's utopia to have everything accessible and for everyone, not just my disability, but, you know, I can't speak on behalf of others, but yeah, it would be fantastic, and I'd love it where it was just the norm and it wasn't thought of. That is probably my biggest dream or goal, what would be fantastic in life. Obviously, I work within the sporting realm, but just everyday stuff would be brilliant. It would make life so much easier. So, yeah, that's probably accessibility for me in a nutshell.
May seem like a halcyon existence, but I feel like hopefully the conversation's starting something that we're going to get there.
I think, like, you know, this is the start maybe, or this is another beginning maybe, and it's important for you to make noise and to say stuff and speak up, and it's very important that we have lots of other people advocate as well, just to try and get it out there. You know, I think we can only do so much, so yeah, make some noise, say something. If it's not good enough, well, it's not good enough, is it?
Exactly right. Now is your chance to make some noise and say something. You can ask these wonderful people anything you like. This is your opportunity, so give us a wave, and I'll take the microphone over just a sec.
Use those stairs, come on.
And they're all the same colour, but there are rims on them.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed the discussion. In terms of Paralympics, London 2012 sort of seems to have sent a real benchmark, not just for putting on a great event, having accessible facilities, but London seemed to really shift attitudes in the United Kingdom, and as a result of that, you've seen things like the employment rate for people with disability really lift where it hasn't shifted in Australia. You've seen that translate into the physical environment as well, with changing places, facilities in the United Kingdom now. I think they have about 1,700 or so compared to 200 in Australia. So I'm just interested in how you think we can learn from and build upon, I guess, what London did in 2012 for Brisbane 2032 in terms of that shift of attitudes.
There you go.
Yeah, I think the difference was they put their Paralympic athletes on a pedestal. You know, they showed them, they told their stories, they profiled them, and I think the marketing ploy was "we are the superhumans," which, you know, a bit much, I think, from our point of view. But it just shifted that narrative from the poor, wheelchair-bound or disability person to the superheroes. You know, it's an extreme shift, but bigger than that, it's just they had people on billboards. They normalised disability. Channel 4 just took it on themselves, so they're going to be the Paralympic expert, and that was their sole focus as their channel. So people in the country could watch their athletes compete. You don't get that here. I turn the TV on the weekend, I see no Paralympic sport at all. I think Dylan Alcott was, you know, the one only, and that was because he plays a mainstream form of, or a wheelchair sport of a mainstream sport, and he's a very influential guy and Australian of the Year. But there's thousands of Dylan Alcotts out there. It's just, I think the media has a role to play to portray athletes as humans as well. And just the more you get to know people, they're just people, just human beings, similar stories, just usually going through adversity in their journey, which people find inspiring and actually adds colour to their story and more entertaining for people to watch.
I'll keep it brief. I think Bondi's kind of wrapped it up pretty well there with regards to what London actually did. What I think is important to kind of encapsulate and take away from is it's not just what London did, it's kind of what everyone else didn't do. And I think there's an important lesson to learn there as well, about sort of what has happened in the games leading up until this point. And I mean, if we look at Sydney 2000, they completely changed the perspective of, I guess, the Olympic Games. Like the Olympics Games had come off sort of LA, Seoul, Atlanta, and the brand of Olympic, which I'm obviously very biased towards Paralympic, but the brand of Olympic was basically falling off a cliff. And it was Sydney 2000 that ultimately lifted that brand to be kind of that household thing that we all know, our Thorpes, we know our Hackett's, we know our Kathy Freemans, we know our legends of the sport because of this event that was shown to the world, which ultimately is what Sydney did. And since then, the next benchmark was obviously London. And so I think it's important to look at the games that have done extremely well for their inclusivity and how they've actually designed state-of-the-art venues, which is important, but also comes with an incredibly huge financial cost. And so it's about finding that balance, I think, between what's new and what's old and what's established and what we can do. And the good thing about 2032 is it's 10 years away. We can do absolutely anything. The problem is that we can't do everything. And so we've got to find the things that we can get our biggest bang for buck to be able to make the most of that particular opportunity. And we've heard lots of those things referred to already today.
Any other questions? It could be anything from grassroots and engagement, involvement, through to the elite level. Oh, you're all very shy. Folks, perhaps just on that note, and we were speaking about 2012 through to 2032, and I distinctly also remember 2012 because it was the first Paralympics that I'd worked in a hosting role with the media. And I remember when the Olympic rings came down and the agitos went up and the narrative was around the warm-up is over and this is the Real Games, and it was such a buzz. I don't think I've ever had that much fun at an event. It was absolutely extraordinary, and I'm sincerely hoping that Brisbane will be an even bigger and better experience of that. But if you could have one idea that you would like to see come to fruition before 2032, what would it be?
I'll quickly dive in to start. I guess for me, it's about emphasising that Paralympics. I mean, I do lots of school visits and talk to primary school kids, and every kid knows what the Olympics is. And so I guess my one legacy item that I leave the kids when I leave the school is every time you hear someone say, we have the Olympics, I want you to add, and the Paralympics. And so that's my little contribution that I make to every single school to start planting that seed. And we're probably not going to change the minds of people of society that are in their sort of 30s, 40s, 50s or older. They're going to be set and they're going to have their behaviours that they have for the rest of their lives. Where we can see that generational change and that legacy that we talk about in that 10 years and then 20 years plus is changing the minds and the perceptions of the young people today. And so for me, that's starting at that young age and bringing through that next generation, which is where we see that legacy really born.
I just think of that little Sophie that I met, that 5-year-old that I described, that she pretty much didn't have any vision, and she's in this little swim squad at Palm Beach, and she's got this awesome coach. And I said, how do you swim at the end? She gets tapped and that sort of thing. So I would like to think of little Sophie when she's 25 and she's 35 and she's 40 for a whole lifetime, that she can still continue to swim, and wherever she's swimming, that maybe that swimming centre has thought about an accessibility hour, or, lifesavers will sort of say, let me see if I can just move one person out of this lane so you can swim. And so the 2032 is a great opportunity to increase these conversations, awareness, and that education piece for service providers in how they're providing whatever service they are to be truly inclusive for the whole community of Australians, whatever their diverse needs. So it really is about, the legacy is about the participation piece that continues on. Yeah.
Very much the same. For me, it's about the legacy beyond it. And ensuring that people with disabilities that are watching the Paralympic Games, there's going to be so much buzz that then they've got the opportunity to go and try and participate in those Paralympic Games, in particular in Queensland, because it's where I'm from. And that also comes down to the facilities, making sure they're accessible for not only high performance athletes, but grassroots.
I know you want to talk about winter.
Actually, no, for this answer.
Okay, over to you.
I think for me, the key thing moving forward is I'd love for the general population of Australia to stop thinking it's okay to call a Paralympian an Olympian. We're not that. We're never we've got permanent disabilities. We're not going to be an Olympian. I don't want to be an Olympian. And most Paralympians say the exact same. And when I kind of try and communicate that to the general population, they say, oh, well, it's just the same. I'm like, well, would you go and call Ian Thorpe a Paralympian? And they're like, oh, no. I'm like, well, then why is it exactly the same? You've inadvertently lowered the Paralympics, even though you're trying to elevate the Paralympics. I feel like that conversation, and it's coming back to what you were saying, that starting off in schools saying Olympian and Paralympian and having them separated by, they're two different entities. They're the same level. They should be the same level. They should be exalted the exact same way. The Paralympians and the Olympians should be put on the exact same pedestal, but there should be acknowledgement that difference is not bad, difference is not negative, difference is just difference. And I think that conversation will then lead into accessible features going to include these Paralympians to the same level as Olympians. We need to have these accessibility features right from, stadiums, grassroots, inclusivity of disabled and able-bodied kids right from kindergarten all the way through to high school and university levels. I think that would be I would love to see that key change by 2032, basically.
Mel, have you got any appetite to be a summer Paralympian? Because I'm trying to talk Louise Savage into an athletic comeback as in the rifle event for 2030. Oh, pistol, sorry. It was a gun. I know. Yeah. And I think there's a real opportunity here. What do you reckon?
What do I reckon? Let's see, if my body ever recovers from being a ski racer, I'd probably end up in judo. So I think that's the only thing that I'm even remotely skilled at in terms of the Summer Paralympic Games. There's no blind rugby. Basically, judo's the closest thing to rugby where a blind person can tackle someone. So, yeah, same thing.
Yeah, fair shout. We'll look out for that. Louise, one thing you would like to see change before 2032?
Yeah, I think I'd like all those things. Thank you very much. I have that conversation all the time with regards to Olympic and Paralympic, and whenever I correct someone, they're like, no, it's exactly the same thing. And I'm like, no, it's not. In many ways, it's not. But I think awareness more than anything in education. I'm totally biased, and I was an athlete during Sydney 2000 Games, and for me, I felt like I'd been to 2 Paralympics before that, but I feel like we really turned the corner here in Australia in the way we educated lots of other people. It was during school, and so the school kids had a massive educational process prior to the Paralympics, and I think that could be another thing that we could really do within Australia, and of course Queensland being here, and increase that awareness. One thing that I see, obviously, and you all would, if you watch the nightly news or commercial news, and the sports comes on and you see a male sport, team sport, male sport, and then you might see a female sport, but then, oh my God, if you see an athlete with a disability in the sports news, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I think I, probably faint. But I would like to see something more like that as mainstream and have it more reporting, what we've done, where we've come. I'm totally biased again. I coach Madison De Rosario, who finished 3rd in the Boston Marathon this year, but there was nothing, you really didn't hear anything about that. But if you'd had an Australian and able-bodied athlete had finished 3rd in the Boston Marathon, I think we would have heard about it. So whether they were male or female. So I kind of get annoyed with that kind of thing a lot. So I think more awareness and accessibility in that realm, and it would make my life a lot easier, and I wouldn't have to try and educate everyone, but which I constantly try to do, unfortunately. They'll probably get sick of me, but that's just where I would love to see it, and I'd love to be so proud again, as I was in Sydney, to be Australian and have home games, and to share our wonderful country with everyone. So that's my dream for 32, and apparently I have to keep coaching until then.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. So you are incredible human beings. Most of all, the ambassador role that you willingly or just inadvertently play is extraordinary, and I know that everyone here will have taken what you've said on board and then relay that out into the world. Hopefully we can get close to some of those aspirations that we've just heard, but from me and everyone here, thank you so much for taking the time to come and chat to us today. Katie Kelly, Blake Cochrane, Chris Bond, Melissa Perrine, Louise Savage, you guys rock. Thank you so much. And what a fabulous way to finish our conference for the final word, because he always does get the final word. Would you please welcome back to the stage the CEO of Disability Sport Australia, Mr. Murray Elborn.
Thanks everyone, and thanks so much to the ambassadors. They do a fantastic job, and we're really honoured to have them as part of Disability Sports Australia and the work that they do for us. Thank you so much. It's been a great finish to the day. Thank you to Steph. We really appreciate your MC work throughout the day. It's been a long day. I've had to have a Gatorade this afternoon just to replenish. Thank you to all of you, because without all of you attending this conference, it wouldn't happen. Our partners, obviously, here at the University of the Sunshine Coast and Sunshine Coast Local Council for giving us the opportunity to be here and do this with you. And to everyone who's attended, spoken today, all of the volunteers, my team, my board, and also my wife, who supports me greatly. But seriously, go away from today and tell everyone you know that disability is where it's at. talk to them about inclusion, talk to them about accessibility, refer people to the National Referral Hub. And we've got your emails and your details, so if we don't get one from you, we'll be in touch. But seriously, thank you everyone. It's been a fantastic day. We hope you've really enjoyed it. And safe travels home, and we will work together very soon. Thank you so much.